Good morning, everybody. This is Engineer Suraj Singh speaking from Bharat, India on this August 2nd, 2021, Monday. Last video was interrupted, so this another one with same topic, quality and safety, and title is same, civil field engineering quality and access, COVID-19 SSG, engineers role, designs, construction methods, contracts, organizations, communication, coordination, and quality, very important issue. So what I was at this quality issue and safety issue, and we were talking of, which I missed actually. Yes, I spoke, but I could not record that, so I speak again. Work at height regulations require that guardrails on scaffolds are at minimum of 950 mm and maximum up unprotected gap between toe and guardrail of a scaffold is 470 mm. This implies use of an intermediate guardrail, although other means such as additional toe boards or screening may be used. It also specifies requirements for personal suspension equipment and means of arresting falls, such as safety nets. When working at height, a hierarchy of measures should then be followed to prevent falls from occurring. These measures are: avoid working at height if possible. If there's an alternative, better avoid working at height and work at ground, and then raise whatever work to that level which is at height, which is located at height. Provision of a properly constructed working platform, completely with toe boards and guardrails. If this is not practicable or where work is of short duration, suspension equipment should be used, and only when this is impracticable, collective fall arrest equipment, airbags or safety nets may be used. Where this is not practicable, individual fall restrainers, safety harness should be used. Only when none of above measures are practicable should ladders or step ladders be considered. Now, fragile roofs and surfaces. Fragile roof and surfaces, work on or near fragile surfaces is also covered by work at height regulations, and particularly work on pitched roofs is hazardous and requires a specific risk assessment and method statement, which we'll discuss later prior to commencement of work. Particular hazards are fragile roofing materials, including those materials which deteriorate and become more brittle with age and exposure to sunlight, exposed edges, unsafe access equipment. This is fragile roof, you can say, falls from girders, ridges or purlins. There must be suitable means of access, such as scaffolding, ladders and crawling boards, suitable barriers, guardrails or covers. Where people work near fragile materials and roof lights, suitable warning signs indicating that a roof is fragile should be on display at ground level. There are other hazards associated with roof work: overhead services and obstructions, presence of asbestos or other hazardous substances, use of equipment such as gas cylinders and bitumen boilers, and manual handling hazards. It's essential that only trained and competent persons are allowed to work on roofs, and that they wear footwear having a good grip. It's a good practice to ensure that a person does not work alone on a roof. Protection against falling objects. Also, now covered by work at height regulations, both construction workers and members of public need be protected from hazards associated with falling objects. Both groups should be protected by use of covered walkways or suitable netting to catch falling debris. Waste material should be brought to ground level by use of chutes or hoists. Waste should not be thrown, and only minimal quantities of building materials should be stored on working platforms. Construction regulations virtually mandates employers to supply head protection or hard hats to employees whenever there is a risk of head injury from falling objects. 6 are exempted. Employer is also responsible for ensuring that hard hats are properly maintained and replaced when they are damaged in whatever way. Self-employed workers must supply and maintain their own head protection. Visitors to construction site should always be supplied with you can say head protection and mandatory head protection signs displayed around site. Demolition. Demolition is one of most hazardous construction operations and is responsible for more deaths and major injuries than whatever other activity. Organization and management of demolition work is controlled by construction, that is design and management organization, regulations and requires a planning supervisor and a health and safety plan. Principal hazards associated with demolitions are fall from height or on same level, falling debris, premature collapse of structure being demolished, dust and fumes, silting up of drainage system by dust, problems arising from split fuel oils, manual handling, presence of asbestos and other hazardous substances, noise and vibration from heavy plant and equipment, electric shock, fires and explosion from use of flammable and explosive substances, smoke from burning waste timber, smoke from burning waste timber, pneumatic drills and power tools, such existence of services such as electricity, gas and water, collision with heavy plants and vehicle overturning. Before whatever work is started, a full site investigation must be made by a competent person to determine hazards and associated risks which may affect demolition workers and members of public who may pass close to demolition site. Investigation should cover following topics: construction details of structure of buildings to be demolished and those of neighboring structures of buildings, presence of asbestos, lead or other hazardous substances, location of whatever underground or overhead services, water, electricity, gas, etc., location of whatever underground cellars, storage, tanks or bunkers, particularly if flammable or explosive substances were previously stored, location of public thoroughfares adjacent to structure of building, construction design management coordinator who is responsible for notifying health and safety executive of proposed demolition work must ensure that a written risk assessment is made of design of structure to be demolished and influence of that design on demolition method proposed. This risk assessment shall normally be made by project designer who also plan demolition work. A further risk assessment should then be made by contractor undertaking demolition. This risk assessment be used to draw up a method statement for inclusion in health and safety plan. A written method statement be required before demolition happens. Contents of method statement shall include details of method of demolition, details of method of demolition to be used, including means of preventing premature collapse, or collapse of adjacent buildings and safe removal of debris from upper levels. Details of equipment including access equipment required and hazardous substances to be used. Arrangements for protection of public and construction workforce, particularly if hazardous substances such as asbestos or other dusts are likely to be released. Details of isolation method of whatever services which may have been supplied to site and whatever temporary services required on site. Details of personnel protective equipment which must be worn, first aid, emergency and accident arrangements, training and welfare arrangements for waste disposal, names of site foremen and those who responsibility for health and safety, and monitoring of work and other risk assessments, cost risk assessments, personal protective equipment, manual handling, etc., should be appended to method statement. Piecemeal and deliberate. Piecemeal, where demolition is done using hand and mechanical tools. Hands and mechanical tools such as pneumatic drills and demolition balls. Deliberate controls collapse, where explosives are used to demolish a structure. This technique should only be used by trained, specialist, competent person. So one is piecemeal and one is deliberate controlled collapse. A very important element of demolition is training required by all construction workers involved in the work. Specialist training courses are available for those concerned with organization of process from initial survey to final demolition. However, induction training which outlines hazards and required control measures should be given to all workers before start of demolition work. Site should be made secure with relevant signs posted to warn members of public of dangers. Excavations. This topic be covered in more details later in this chapter. Excavations must be constructed so that they are safe environments for construction work to take or to affect. They must also be fenced and suitable notices posted so that neither people nor vehicles fall into them as required by work at height regulations. Prevention of drowning. Where construction work takes effect over waters, steps should be taken to prevent people falling into water, and rescue equipment should be available all times. Vehicles and traffic routes. All vehicles used on site should be regularly maintained and records kept. Only trained drivers should be allowed to drive vehicles, and training should be relevant to particular vehicle. Forklift truck, dumper truck, etc. Vehicles should be fitted with reversing warning system. SHE investigations have shown that in over 30% of dumper trucks accidents, drivers had little experience and no training. Common forms of accident include driving into excavations, overturning while driving up steep inclines, and runway vehicles which have been left unattended. With engine running, many vehicles such as mobile cranes require regular inspection and test certificates. A small dumper truck is widely used on all sizes of construction site. Compact dumper trucks are involved. You can see these involved, and you can say barriers around excavation by footpath, and also you can say in about 30% construction transports accidents. Three main causes of such accidents are overturning on slopes and at edges of excavations, poorly maintained braking system, and driver error due to lack of training and or experience. Driver error due to lack of training and experience. Some of hazards associated with this vehicle are collision with pedestrians, other vehicles or structures such as scaffolding, etc. They can be struck by falling materials and tools or be overloaded. Person driving a truck can be thrown from vehicle, come into contact with moving parts on truck, suffer effects of whole body vibrations due to driving over potholes in roadway, and suffer from effects of noise and dust. Precautions that can be taken to address these hazards include use of authorized, trained, competent, and supervised drivers only. As with so many other construction operations, risk should be assessed. Safe systems of work followed, and drivers forbidden from taking shortcuts. Following site control should also be in place. Designated traffic routes and signs, speed limits, stop blocks used when vehicle is stationary, proper inspection and maintenance procedures for starting, loading and unloading vehicle, provision of rollover protective structures and seat restraints. Provisions of falling object protective structures. Provisions of falling objects protective structures when there is a risk of being hit by falling materials. Visual and audible warning of approach where necessary, hearing protection. For other forms of mobile construction equipment such as forklift trucks, risk to people from overturning of equipment must always be safeguarded. This can usually be achieved by avoidance of working on steep slopes, which can be this can usually be achieved by avoidance of working on steep slopes, provision of stabilizers, and ensuring that load carried does not affect stability of equipment or vehicle. Then there's a description in chapters 14, hazards, safeguards, and precautions for several pieces of equipment and machinery used in construction work, such as cement, concrete mixer, and bench-mounted circular saw. Traffic routes, loadings, and storage areas required to be well designed with enforced speed limits, good visibility, and separation of vehicles and pedestrians being considered. Use of one-way system and separate site access gates for vehicles and pedestrians may be required. Finally, safety of members of public must be considered, particularly where vehicles cross public footpaths. Fire and other emergencies. Emergency procedure relevant to site should be in place to prevent or reduce injury arising from fire, explosions, flooding, or structural collapse. These procedures should include location of fire points and assembly points, extinguisher provisions, site evacuation, contact with emergency services, accident reporting and investigation, and rescue from excavations, and confined spaces. There also needs be training for in these proceedings at induction of new workers and ongoing for all workers. Welfare facilities. Health, safety executive has been concerned for some time at poor standard of welfare facilities on many construction sites. Sanitary and washing facilities, including showers if required, with an adequate supply of drinking water, should be provided for everybody working on site. Accommodation shall be required for changing and storage of clothes, and rest facilities for break times. There should be adequate first aid provision and protective clothing against adverse weather conditions. Electrical hazards have been covered in detail earlier in chapters, and all control measures mentioned apply on a construction site. However, due to possibility of wet conditions, it is recommended that only 110 voltage equipment is used on site. Where main electricity is used, perhaps during final fitting out of building, residential current devices should be used with all equipment. Where workers on tall heavy vehicles tall vehicles work near or under overhead power lines, either power should be turned off, or goal post or tape markers used to prevent contact with lines. Similarly, underground supply lines should be located and marked before digging takes effect. Noise machinery should be fitted with silencers. When machinery is used in workshop, such as woodworking machines, a noise survey should be undertaken, and if noise levels exceed second action level, use of ear defenses becomes mandatory. Health hazards. Health hazards are present on a construction site. These hazards include vibration, dust including asbestos, cement, solvents, and paints, as well as cleaners. A scorch character assessment is essential before work starts, with regular updates as new substances are introduced. Copies of assessment and related safety data sheet should be kept in site offices of reference after accidents, fires. Copies of assessment and related safety data sheets should be kept in site office for reference after accidents or fires. They will also be required to check that correct personal protective equipment is available. A manual handling assessment should also be made to ensure that lifting and handling of heavy objects is kept to minimum. Many health hazards as covered, including silica, which is a commonly produced during construction activities. Such activities which can expose workers and members of public to silica dust include cutting building blocks, other stone masonry work, cutting or drilling paving slabs and concrete paths, demolition work, sandblasting of buildings, and tunneling. In general, use of power tools to cut or dress stone and other silica containing materials shall lead to very high exposure levels while work is occurring. In most cases, exposure levels are in excess of workplace exposure limits by factors greater than 2, and in some cases as high as 12. In response to growing evidence of ill health effects of silica inhalation, SHE has recently revised workplace exposure limit down from 0.3 mg per meter cube to 1.1 mg per meter cube. Inhalation of very fine silica dust can lead to a development of silicosis. SHE have produced a detailed information on sheet on silica. In addition to silica, there are 3 additional hazardous substances: cement dust and wet cement. In addition to silica, there are 3 additional hazardous substances that are particularly relevant to construction actions. So let me go to open something here. Hold on please for a moment. One moment, I'll go. Come back in 5 minutes. Cement dust. Inhalation of very fine silica dust can lead to development of silicosis it is, Inhalation of very fine silica dust can lead to development of silicosis. SHE have produced a detailed information sheet on silica. In addition to silica, there are three additional hazardous substances that are particularly relevant to construction activities: cement dust and wet cement, wood dust and biological hazard tetanus. Cement dust and wet cement. Cause as such. Cause as such. Control of substances hazardous to health regulations. Control of substances hazardous to. All right. That's one. So this was actually COS as such. We talked of control of substances. Control of substances hazardous to health. So as dust and wet cement. Cement dust and wet cement is an important construction and also hazardous substance. Cement dust and wet cement is an important construction and is also a hazardous substance. Contact with wet cement can cause serious burns. Contact with wet cement can cause serious burns of ulcers, which shall take several months to heal and may need a skin graft. Dermatitis, both irritant and allergic, can be caused by skin contact with either wet cement or cement powder. Allergic dermatitis is caused by an allergic reaction to hexavalent chromium, that's chromate, which is present in cement. Cement powder can also cause inflammation and irritation to eyes, irritation of nose and throat, and possibly chronic lung problems. Research has shown that between 5 and 10% of construction workers are probably allergic to cement, and plasterers, concreters, and bricklayers or masons are particularly at risk. A plasterer who knelt in wet cement for 5 hours while working required skin graft to his legs. So I repeat this paragraph, it's important. Cement dust and wet cement is an important construction and also a hazardous substance. Contact with wet cement can cause serious burns. Contact with wet cement can cause serious burns or ulcers, which shall take several months to heal and may need a skin graft. Dermatitis, both irritant and allergic, can be caused by skin contact with either wet cement or cement powder. Allergic dermatitis is caused by an allergic reaction to hexavalent chromium, which is present in cement. Cement powder can also cause inflammation and irritation of eye, irritation of nose and throat, and possibly chronic lung problems. Research has shown that between 5 to 10% of construction workers are probably allergic to cement. Plasterers, concreters, bricklayers, or masons are particularly at risk. A plasterer who knelt in wet cement for 5 hours while working required skin graft to his legs. Manual handling of wet cement or cement bags can lead to musculoskeletal health, musculoskeletal health problems, and cement bags weighing more than 25 kg should not be carried by a single worker. Personal protective equipment in form of gloves, overalls with long sleeves and full length trousers and waterproof boots must be worn on all occasions. On all occasions. If atmosphere is dusty, goggles and respiratory protection equipment must be worn. An important factor in possibility of dermatitis occurring is sensitivity of worker to chromate in cement and existing condition of skin including cuts and abrasions. Finally, adequate welfare facilities are essential so that workers can wash their hands at end of job and before eating, drinking or using toilet. If cement is left on skin for long periods without being washed off, risks of an allergic reaction to hexavalent chromium shall increase. A 2005 amendment to COSH Customs of Substances Health Hazard Regulations prohibits supply of cement which has a concentration of more than 2 parts per million of chromium 6. This measure is designed to prevent allergic contact dermatitis when wet cement comes into contact with skin. However, since strong alkalinity of cement shall remain, there is still potential for skin burns. Approved Code of Practice gives useful advice on possible control measures by offering 2 routes for employers to comply with amended COSH regulations. They can either use generic advice given in COSH Essentials HSG 9193 or design a solution themselves with help of computer advice. In whatever event, controls should be proportionate to health risk. Regulations stress need to provide adequate washing, changing, eating and drinking facilities. Wood dust. Wood dust. Wood dust can be hazardous, particularly when it is hardwood. When it is hardwood, dust which is known in rare cases to lead to nasal cancer. Wood dust can be hazardous, particularly when it's hardwood dust, which is known in rare cases to lead to nasal cancer. Composite board such as medium density fiber board, MDF, medium density fiber board, are hazardous due to resin bonding materials used, which also can be carcinogenic. Carcinogenic. There are three types of wood-based boards available: laminated board, particle board, laminated board, particle board, and fiber board. Resins used to bond fiber board together contain formaldehyde, usually urea formaldehyde. It's generally recognized that formaldehyde is probably carcinogenic to humans and is subject to workplace exposure limit WEL. At low exposure level, it can cause irritation to eyes. It can cause irritation to eyes, nose and throat, and can lead to dermatitis, asthma, and rhinitis. Main problems are most likely to occur when MDF, that is, you can say MDF, that is medium density fiber board, is being machined and dust is produced. A suitable risk assessment should be made. Gloves and appropriate masks should always be worn when machining medium density fiber board. However, it's important to stress that safer materials are available which do not contain formaldehyde, and they should be considered for use in first instance. Formaldehyde. Wood dust is produced whenever wood materials are machined, particularly sawed, sanded, bagged as dust from dust extraction units, or during cleaning operations especially. If compressed air used, main hazards associated with all wood dust are skin disorders, nasal problems such as rhinitis and asthma. There is also a hazard from fire and wash. Assessment is essential to show whether particular wood dust is hazardous. When wood dust is created inside a woodworking shop, a well-designed extraction system is essential. Personal protective equipment in form of gloves, suitable respiratory protective equipment, overalls and eye protection may also be necessary as a result of assessment. Bacterium that lives in soil. It usually enters human body through a wound from an infected object, such as a nail, wood splinter, or thorn. On entering wound, it produces a powerful toxin which attacks nerves that supply muscle tissue. It's commonly known as lockjaw because after an incubation period of approximately a week, a stiffness of around jaw area occurs. Later, disease spreads to other muscles, including breathing system, and this can be fatal. Disease has been well controlled with anti-tetanus immunization, and it's important that all construction workers are so immunized. Booster shots should be obtained every few years. Flesh wounds should be thoroughly cleaned immediately, and an antiseptic health hazards which could affect construction workers are noise, vibration, asbestos, solvents, fumes, radiation, particularly from sunlight, and biological hazards such as leptospirosis from sewer work. Health surveillance may well be required for these hazards. So, tetanus is very important here. You know it very well. Everybody takes tetanus injections. And now we go to waste disposal. Collection and removal should be located on firm level ground away from main construction work, particularly excavation work. This shall allow clear access to skip for filling and removal from site. On arrival on site, integrity of skip should be checked. It should be filled either by chute or by mechanical means unless items can be placed in by hand. Skip should not be overfilled and be netted or sheeted over when it is full. Hazardous waste should be segregated as described before. This regulation applies to whole of construction projects. From initial feasibility study to handover of completed structure to customer. CDM 2007 came into force on 6th April 2007. They replaced construction design and to welfare arrangements, largely former construction, health, safety and welfare regulations. A client is an organization. A client is an organization or individual for whom a construction project is carried out. It's very common. Clients only have duties when project is associated with a business or other undertaking. Client only has duties when project is associated with a business or other undertaking, whether for profit or with no profit. This can include, for example, local authorities, school governors, insurance companies, and project originators or private finance initiative projects. Domestic clients are a special case and do not have duties under CDM of designs or preparing designs for construction work, including variations. This includes preparation of drawings, design details, specifications, bills of quantities, and specifications of prohibition of articles and substances, as well as all related analysis, calculations, and preparatory work. Arranging for their employees or other people under their control to prepare designs relating to structure or part of a structure. It doesn't matter whether design is recorded, that's on paper, and design practices of whatever discipline, contributing to or having overall responsibility for whatever part of design, for example, drainage engineer. Plant which forms part of permanent structure, including lifts, heating, ventilation, and electrical systems. For example, a specialist provider of permanent fire extinguishing installations, those purchasing materials where choice has been left open. For example, those purchasing building blocks and so deciding weights that a brick layer must handle. Contractors, contractors carrying out design work as part of their contribution to a project, such as an engineering contractor providing design, procurement, and construction management organization services. Temporary works engineers, including those designing auxiliary structures such as formwork, false work, requirements to stabilize existing structures, those determining how buildings and structures are altered. Clients with a key project advisor in respect of construction, health and safety, risk management matters. Their main purpose is to help clients to carry out their duties, to coordinate health and safety aspects of design work, and to prepare health and safety file. Principal contractor is contractor appointed by client for notifiable projects. Principal contractor can be organization of an individual and main or managing contractor. The principal contractor's key duty is to coordinate and manage construction phase to ensure that health and safety of everybody. Pre-construction health and safety information. Pre-construction health and safety information. Client must provide to designers Client must provide to designers and contractors for notifiable projects CDM coordinator specific health and safety information required to identify hazards and risks associated with design and construction work. Information needs to be identified, assembled, and sent out in good time so that those who need it when preparing a bid or preparing for work can decide what resources shall be needed to enable design, planning, and construction work to be organized and carried out properly. Topics which should be addressed: construction phase health and safety plan. Construction phase health and safety plan. Principal contractors must set out way in which construction phase shall be managed, and key health and safety issues for particular project must be set out in writing. Health and safety plans should set out organization and arrangements that have been put in place to manage risks and coordinate work on site. It should not be repository for detailed or generic risk. It should be repository of detailed generic risk assessments, records of how decisions were reached, or detailed method statements for contractors and others to understand, emphasizing key points and avoiding irrelevant materials. It's crucial that all relevant parties are involved in project. Generic plans shall not satisfy requirements of regulation. Photographs and sketches can greatly simplify and shorten explanations. It should also be organized so that a record of information for client to retain which focuses on health and safety, alerts those who are responsible for structure and equipment in it on significant health and safety risks that need be dealt with during subsequent use. Construction maintenance, cleaning, repair, alterations, refurbishment, and demolition work. Method statement: a written document laying out work procedures results from risk assessment. Holidays and weekends do not count. If no construction work takes effect on these days, CDM coordinator responsible to make notification as soon as possible after their appointment for a particular project. Notice must be displayed where it can be read. This is an essential part of effective organization of construction projects. ACOP should be consulted for further details. Coordination and cooperation is a requirement for all members of project team. However, there is no requirement for appointment of CDM coordinator, principal contractor, or a construction phase health and safety plan for non-notifiable projects. For low-risk projects, a low-key approach shall suffice. However, for higher risk projects, namely those involving demolition, a more rigorous approach is required. Architect or lead designer should normally lead coordination of design work, while main contractor or builder should coordinate construction work. A brief summary plan that is required in many cases, but where risks are higher, something close to construction phase plan. Deep excavations and those in unstable or contaminated ground. Unusual working methods or safeguards. Ionizing radiation or other significant health hazards. Nearby high voltage power lines. A risk of falling into water, which is so may become fast flowing. Diving explosives, heavy or complex. Clients non-domestic. Clients are not expected to manage or organize or plan projects themselves. They are not expected to develop substantial expertise in construction, health, and safety unless this is essential to their business. Clients must ensure that various activities are done, things are done, but are not normally expected to do them themselves. If help is needed, this should be available from competent person appointed under regulations of management of health and safety at work. Alternatively, clients could seek advice from someone who has acted as CDM coordinator on other projects. Appointment of a CDM coordinator is not a requirement for non-notifiable projects. Client must make sure that designers, contractors, and others who they propose to engage are competent people, are adequately resourced. They allow sufficient time for each stage of project. They cooperate with others concerned as necessary to allow people to fulfill their duties. They coordinate their own contractors have made arrangements for suitable welfare facilities to be provided from start and throughout project. Whatever fixed workplaces which are to be constructed comply with workplace health, safety, and welfare regulations. Relevant information, pre-construction information likely to be required by designers, contractors, or others to plan and manage work is passed to them. Clients should make periodic checks through life of project, for example, to check that adequate welfare facilities have been provided by contractor, check that there is good cooperation measures to address health and safety issues likely to be involved in designs. Check that clients are aware of duties. When designing a project, avoid foreseeable risks. To those involved in construction and future use of structures. What is that? In doing so doing they should eliminate hazards so far as risk them involved in design. Check that clients are aware of duties. When designing project, avoid foreseeable and reduce risk associated with hazards that remain provide that remain. Provide adequate information about whatever significant risk associated with design. Coordinate their work with that of others in order to improve way in which risks are out construction work. Those cleaning and maintaining structure, particularly windows or translucent panels, those who use risk structures for competent and adequately resourced. Plan, manage, organize, and monitor their own work to make sure that workers under their control are safe and site induction which they need work safely. To report problems or to respond appropriately in an emergency. Ensure that whatever design work they have, they do complies with requirements on design regulations and safety of construction sites. Cooperate with others and coordinate their own work with others' works. Alterations that could result in a structural collapse or is on contaminated ground. For notifiable projects, client has following additional duties. Appoint a CDM coordinator to advise and assist with their duties and to coordinate arrangements for health and safety during planning phase. Appoint a principal contractor to plan and manage construction work, preferably early enough for them to work with designer on abilities to be present from start of work. appointees and adequacy of arrangements. If a client does not make these appointments, they are liable for work of CDM coordinator and principal contractor as well as not making appointment. And assistance to clients in order to help them comply with project, notify HSC SHE about project, coordinate design work, planning and other preparations for construction where relevant to health and safety, identify and collect pre-construction information and advise client if surveys need be commissioned to fill significant gaps. Plan and arrangements made to ensure that welfare facilities are on site. Manage flow of health and safety information between clients, designers and contractor. Manage flow of health and safety information between clients, designers and contractors. Advise client on suitability of initial construction phase. Plan and arrangements made to ensure that suitable for future use at end of construction phase. Design work other than initial design work unless a CDM coordinator has been appointed. Cooperate with CDM coordinator, principal contractor and with whatever other designations or contracts as necessary for each of them to comply with their duties. This includes providing whatever information needed for pre-construction information. Principal contractors must satisfy themselves that clients are aware of their duties, that a CDM coordinator has been appointed and SHE notified before work starts. Make sure that they are competent to address health and safety issues likely to be involved in management of construction project phase. Ensure that construction phase is properly planned, managed, organized and monitored with adequately resourced, competent site organization, management appropriate to risk and activity. Ensure that every contractor who work on project is informed of minimum amount of time which they shall be allowed for planning and preparation before they begin work on site. Ensure that all contractors are provided with information about project that they need enable them carry out their work safely and without risks to health. Request from contractors for information should be met properly. Ensure that a suitable construction phase of health and safety plan is prepared before construction work begins, developed in discussion with and communicated to contractors affected by it, implemented and kept up to date as project progresses. Satisfy themselves that designers and contractors they engage are competent and adequately resourced. Ensure suitable welfare facilities are provided from the start of construction phase. Take reasonable steps to prevent unauthorized access to site, prepare and enforce whatever necessary site rules. Provide copies of or access to relevant parts of health and safety plan and other information to contractors including self-employed in time for them to plan their work. Liaise with CDM coordinator on design carried out during construction phase, including design by specialist contractors and its implications for health and safety plan. Provide CDM coordinator promptly with whatever information relevant to health and safety file ensures that all workers have been provided with suitable health and safety induction, information and training. Ensure that workforce is consulted about health and safety matters. Display project notification. Safety, health and safety file. Health and safety file is a record of relevant information for client or customers. It shall be developed as construction progresses with various designers or contractors. Adding information as it becomes available should be useful to clients who have a duty to provide information about premises to those who carry out work there. Designers during development of further designs alterations. A CDM coordinator preparing construction work, principal contractors and contractors preparing to carry out or manage such work. A number of people have legal duties with respect to health and safety file. CDM coordinators must prepare